Hey, everybody, welcome to the Brimstone Coaching Podcast. I'm Kurt Busch, co founder and coach here at the Brimstone Coaching Group, here with my friend, co founder, and coach, Chris Godfredson. How's it going today, Chris?
Doing pretty well, Kurt. It's good to see you
Yeah, same. I always like doing these with you.
for sure.
So, today, Chris, we are going to wrap up this series that we've been doing in the first quarter of 2025, that we've been looking at what it means for a leader to invest in their own growth.
Yeah.
All the way back to the end of 2024, you and I said, as gently as we could, that a leader that does not intentionally invest in their own growth is disqualified from leading. We gave that as gently as we could, as
Yeah, we did.
invitationally as we could.
Yep.
Um, and we've walked along the way here in the first little bit of 2025, and we want to wrap up today by giving sort of a practical step forward for people that are leaning into their own, for leaders that are leaning into their own
Hmm.
growth with us. And we want to do that by talking about preferred promises.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's a fun topic.
it is a fun topic.
Yeah.
Maybe for the listener, I wonder if maybe we could just explain what we mean when we say promises and why we're going to use
Yeah.
that word promise over and over, because it maybe doesn't start with preferred promise.
Yeah. Right. The preferred promise is probably addressing a previous promise
Hmm.
that has us showing up in the world in ways that don't really represent the way that we want to show up in the world. So uh, we think that words have power. And
Yeah.
because we believe that words have power, when for many of us, when we're earlier in our lives, we had experiences. Now, I want to say that we have experiences every single day, hundreds of experiences,
Yeah.
likely every single day. And when we were younger, when we had encounters, and I use those words differently because encounters often surprise us, they
Mm,
shock us, and then they have us behave in ways that we probably regret later. So when we have encounters, when we are a younger human, we make meaning from those encounters. Oftentimes, the meaning we make is simply for the sake of protecting ourselves.
yeah.
So we make a promise to ourselves. The meaning could, I mean, it might be right, it might be wrong,
Yeah.
it might be good, it might be bad, doesn't matter. We still make a promise to ourselves to protect ourselves at all costs. And
Yeah.
so we think about promises in in that light, and protective promise is what we did. This is a promise we made to ourselves so that we wouldn't feel the feels, or we
Yeah.
wouldn't experience the humiliation, the shame, whatever the thing was that was a result of that resulted in our protective promise. And we believe that we are able, we have agency. We don't have to be victims to our
Yeah.
circumstances or the promises that we made to ourselves as adults. As
Yeah.
adults, we can get to our best thinking, and we actually have preferred ways of being. So we think about these promises as preferred promises because we like to alliterate stuff. And what's a better word than preferred promise?
We do like to alliterate stuff.
Is that
Yes.
fun? Yeah, is that fair?
That is fair. Yep. And these promises are to who, Chris?
Up to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we do believe, as Chris said, that words have power, and we believe that we get to make these promises to ourselves. And what's true is that we've been walking through this first quarter, especially these last few episodes. And listener, if you haven't heard them, I encourage you to go back and listen to them. We've been talking about obstacles to
mhm,
discovery, obstacles to self-awareness, obstacles to the work of transformation and wholeness. And I think how we want to end today is to say that even though those obstacles are real, and even though we all feel them in our lives every single day, the internal and the external, we still have agency to make these promises to ourselves.
sure do.
Yeah. They're independent from these outside obstacles. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
We like to think about these like this that these preferred promises are what guide our behavior and our action and our thinking when the world goes sideways, when
Mm,
our world goes sideways.
yeah,
Is that a fair way to think about that, Chris?
that is. But as I'm listening to you say that, and a lot of stuff stirs in me. Like, do you have an example where like when things go sideways?
I do.
Great.
I think I've shared before some of the things that I've protected against in my past. So I maybe won't bore with those. I maybe won't go too deep into those, but my preferred promises, the two that stir up the most for me that I hold on to really, really, really closely is number one, I tell the truth.
Mhm.
Um, I am a people pleasing nine Enneagram.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you
what's
are.
true about me is I value relationships above
Mm,
almost everything else. And I seek harmony. And
mm,
what's true is when I'm not in my best thinking, I can fall into the trap of saying, I'm going to answer questions or give opinions or whatever the opportunity to use my voice is. I'm going to do it in a way that is probably going to be true, but probably going
mm.
to be said in a way that's not disharmonious. I might not exactly uh, tell the whole truth all the time.
Yeah.
I might block some of it. I might guard some of it. I might hold some of it
Mm,
back,
yeah.
um, all for the sake of protecting relationships. And
Mm,
what I know is true that often 99% of the time that threat of losing relationships as adult Kurt is just not present.
yeah.
So that's one preferred promise is I tell the truth.
Mm,
My other I have maybe two other. I'm on the fly trying to think of which one that I want to go to.
yeah.
Um, I think the other that I want to say is that I say what's so,
Mm,
which feels similar to I tell the truth,
it
but
does.
but when I say what's so, that's my way of saying I name what I need and what I want.
Mm,
Um, I express needs and desires,
yeah.
um, which again, as a people pleaser, is something that I've been prone to set aside.
Yeah.
And unlike some of that truth piece, unlike that, I will just not name anything
Mm,
to do with needs or desires, or
yeah.
I've been known to do that over the course of my adult life. So those are two really really strong ones that I hold on to and go to even now today quite a bit.
Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing those.
yeah. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, the one that's on the tip of my tongue as I think about the value of sharing a preferred promise today is like I've found myself in leadership roles for most of my life.
Mm,
I led things as a child, as an athlete. I led people down wrong paths
mm,
during my
yeah,
college years, and I mean, people would follow me,
yeah,
and into adulthood, I led a business. I was in an ownership interest at 27,
mm,
and I was leading people that already there. And I have led people my entire life. And we live in the state of Iowa, right?
yeah, yep,
And so like if you're out on a walk and nobody's following you, you're an idiot out walking around to people in Nebraska. That's what I used to hear
and
in
Illinois.
my first college experience, right? Yeah, and so like I think like the the early stage things, the early promises that I made to myself to feel safe was to make sure that you didn't think or find out that I sucked or I wasn't a good leader.
Yeah,
And so, like, as I have engaged this work, as I get clearer on things, my preferred promise when I think about myself and leadership roles is I lead with authenticity,
mm,
integrity, and courage. That
yeah,
makes me a person worth following.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
there might be people back there following me on my walk or in my leadership. There might not be.
Yeah.
But what would happen when I found myself in meetings and something got stirred up in me, then I would start to behave in ways that I
Mm.
didn't want to behave in. Right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
responded with that protective promise. And I've probably said this here if I haven't. Like I'm 56 now, but the reality is like 6-year-old Chris came out in those meetings.
Yeah.
And the world doesn't need my 6-year-old self. It was maybe helpful when I was 6,
Yeah.
that protected promise, but that preferred promise helps me show up, enables me to show up the way that I want to,
Yeah.
not as a stirred up, out of control fool, but as
Yeah.
one who's thoughtful. And I lead with authenticity, integrity, and courage. And I
Yeah.
do actually believe that that makes me a person worth following.
Yeah.
Now, do I do that perfectly all the time? No. I
Yeah.
mean, it's become an actual thing, but there's still times when I either see it and I choose to, okay, clean up your mess later,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I don't recognize it and I'm just so moved off kilter that I do the thing that I do when I do the protective promises thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think it's important what you said, or it's important to note what you said when you said, "Do I do it perfect every time?" No. What would you say to the person who's hearing this saying, "Well, if you don't do it perfect every time, are you actually doing the work? Or if you're not doing it perfect, is it actually working?" What would you say to that person?
Yeah, that's good. I think I would say that uh, this is a destination. This is not a destination that we arrive at. We are on a journey to become
Yeah,
increasingly whole, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
what's true for me is more often than not, I show up and am able to be in contentious situations, in conflict, in um, places and spaces that maybe make me feel uncomfortable. And that preferred promise enables me to behave the way I actually want to, more
yeah,
times than not.
yeah,
And what was true before my preferred promises, I never did it.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
we say practice doesn't make perfect, it makes progress.
yeah,
And for me, it's progress is everything.
yeah.
How would you
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it like this that I spent so many years living into those old patterns. I spent
Mhm.
so many years not naming what's so, right?
Mhm.
The idea that I might overnight just do it perfectly just feels ridiculously impossible.
Right. And
It's
so then
just
we,
impossible.
and if perfection is the expectation, why even try?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the
Because
minute then, yeah.
we're never going to attain perfection.
Yeah. Yeah. The minute I come off the rails or the minute I make a mess and don't keep that promise to myself,
Mhm.
if perfection's goal, now I'm like full of shame. I throw up my
Yeah,
hands, I walk away, and I say, well, I might as well just go
that's
back to
it.
what,
I'm out.
yep,
Right.
yep.
Yeah.
I didn't feel this in my old ways of being, you know? So yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think it's really important to name that this is a journey
Yeah.
not a finish line. And I think it's really critical too. You talked about cleaning up a mess.
Mm.
Um, I wonder if you'd like to say a little more about that because I imagine maybe the listener is hearing, wait a minute, these promises are to ourselves.
Mm.
What mess are we cleaning up? Can you say a little more about that?
I'll try to.
Yeah,
I think when I think about cleaning up a mess is like if you and I are in a, let's say we're having a Brimstone coaching group conversation. We're having coffee tomorrow and
yeah,
and I have this vision of how I'm going to show up in our conversation. And let's say you're frustrated with me about something. And when you share your frustration, then uh, I throw all caution to the wind and I just let you have it
yeah,
because I'm an Enneagram 8 and I'm going to challenge you take an issue with me.
yeah,
And that being the case, then like I really am out of integrity with you
yeah,
because
yeah,
in our business relationship, we understand that like we are in this together. We're for each other. And if you question me and I feel attacked, or like you think I suck because I made this decision or
Yeah.
I did this thing, then uh, I can't, in all integrity, treat you as my worst self, right? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
lead even myself. I lead myself with
Yeah.
authenticity, integrity, and courage, and I owe it to you to do so, to treat you with dignity,
Mm.
respect, charity, all those things. And when I'm out of alignment with myself, I need to clean up my mess with myself first.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
like, and this, like when I learned this for the first time, I laughed out loud. Like, say sorry to yourself and then try
Right.
again. What?
Yep.
What
Same.
kind of
Same.
hocus pocus is this? And it's crazy talk until you start to understand. Is
Yeah.
like, yeah, like I actually like have a vision for my life, and I'm not living the way that I want to live. And
Yeah.
well, because before I then would just quit, say, forget
Yeah.
it. This isn't worth it because I didn't
Yeah.
have permission to fail because of
Yeah.
my protected promise. Right.
Yeah.
So instead, it's like I clean up my mess with myself. Okay, sorry. How is it that I actually want to show up when I meet with Kurt next time or when I'm in this meeting? Here's my
Yeah.
vision. I lead with authenticity, integrity, and courage. And that makes me a person worth following. So
Yeah.
lead with authenticity. So then I would say to you, I'm a little uncomfortable with the way you're talking to me right now. I don't feel
Yeah.
respected.
Yeah.
And even in my eightness, that takes some courage
Yeah.
to say that to a person that I care about, I love, all those things.
Yeah.
But integrity, like if our we think about integrity two ways. I do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it in a manner it's intended to be done. And um, is the relationship workable?
Yeah.
And so if I'm out of integrity, if I treat you like I would treat the dog when I'm angry, that just doesn't work. That isn't who
Yeah.
I am, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that's what I think about when I clean up a mess. But then I would also need to clean up my mess with you
Yeah.
because I mean, we in our organizing documents, we never said this is how we're going to treat each other.
Yeah.
It's unspoken, it's
Yeah.
unwritten, it's
Yeah.
understood, right?
Yeah.
And if I am way out of line, I need to come to you and say, hey,
Yeah.
what is the impact
Yeah.
of my behavior?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then you get to tell me what the impact was. Then I can
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah.
And then we carry on, just like we did when we did this about a week or two ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
What do you
that's
want to
really
say
good.
about cleaning up messes?
Um, I I I was gonna try to move us on, so I didn't have to answer
Okay,
that, Chris. No,
good try.
no, I'm just um yeah, I mean, I was with you. I remember the first time someone helped me think about cleaning up a mess with myself. I thought this is so dumb. Uh but
No,
I think I also continue to get clear that I do make these promises to myself. Here's how I want to be in a given circumstance.
yeah.
And then when I don't do that, or when I don't live up to that, or I don't fulfill that promise, there is disappointment and there is hurt, right? That there
Yeah.
is an impact. I think this feels like what you say. Once we see something, we can't unsee it.
Yes,
Once we
sir.
decide how we want to be, we just we can't just drop the ball or make a mess and pretend like there's no impact, right?
Mhm.
So I think there is something really beautiful about being able to say to ourselves, and obviously I'm not looking in the mirror talking to, maybe some people do. I think that's okay.
Mhm.
But I'm not most of the time verbalizing this out loud to myself, but I think there is something about saying, "Hey, self, I messed this up, and I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do the same thing over again, or I'm at least gonna re-promise. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Yep.
re-promise that in this
Yep.
situation, I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna be
Yep.
compassionate to myself,
Yep.
and I'm gonna try it again. So,
Because we do. I mean, I think it's being true to our desires to not quit,
yeah,
to keep with it, to okay, I made this promise. didn't live into it. But
Hmm.
I'm going to come back and I'm going to keep trying
Yeah.
because it will make progress as I try.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take a little break and then
Good.
we'll come back. What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't the challenge in front of you, but the promises that you've made to yourself? At Brimstone Coaching Group, we help teams, businesses, and organizations break through hidden barriers in our Promises Workshop. This is a hands on experience that helps you and your team identify and replace self limiting beliefs with purposeful promises that foster growth, confidence, and resilience. You can bring this powerful workshop to your company, nonprofit, or leadership team and start creating a culture of trust, collaboration, and transformation. Visit brimstonecoachinggroup.com to learn more. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Brimstone Coaching Podcast. Chris, we were talking before the break about cleaning up messes with
Mm-hmm.
ourselves when we don't fulfill the promises, the preferred promises we make.
Yeah.
Um, at the break, you said maybe we should think about talking about how we go about making one of these preferred
Uh,
promises.
why did I not lead in?
That's a good question.
I think I'm going to ask you the question
No,
right
no,
now.
no, no. What do you want to say? I see how I got in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I
What do
did.
you want to what do you want to say about the beginning of making these preferred promises? Where does this begin for people?
Mm, yeah. I think I mean, like we can say it begins with self-awareness.
Yeah,
Am I aware of
yeah,
the reality that I'm not behaving the way I hope to, or that I'm not showing up in places and spaces the way that um, that I know that I should. So
yeah,
for me, that oftentimes was feelings like regret and remorse. I would go to a meeting, 6-year-old Chris came out, and I was like, no, I mean, can I, is it actually possible? And so
yeah,
that's really like, here has to be really bad if I'm going to be
yeah,
willing to go there. Right.
yeah,
And so it becomes, if Bob Ross was here off in the corner painting a couple of happy little trees, like we get to envision what what our lives can actually look like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
say, like, who is it or how is it? Is there somebody that I want to emulate, or is there a way of being that
yeah,
that would serve me well? And so then we start to think about that, and we can evaluate. Well, my protective promise has always said this, and um, and I have this other way that I actually hope to behave,
yeah,
another way that I hope to actually live, and then we start just writing stuff down or
yeah,
typing it out. Like one of our friends, will, as protected or as preferred promises rather, written on a Word doc,
mm,
and so then
yeah,
he keeps them. So he
yeah,
has his first one, and it says this, and then he has the edit that says this, and
mm,
after that
I
happens
like
for a
that.
while, you have multiple iterations, and I
Yeah,
like the fact, right? I mean,
yeah,
you can cast the die, you can put this in concrete, but I think the reality is like, this is a process that we work through,
yeah,
and what's
yeah,
true for me today, that preferred promise, I might have a different preference 5 years from
yeah,
now. Uh,
yeah,
even as it relates to leadership, right?
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
we go through a process where we say, okay, this is how I behaved when this happened. This is what I did. And when I did that thing, there was impact. And it
yeah,
impacted me personally. But it all, to stay with the example, it impacted me personally. And then when I got present to the fact that it impacted you, I was like, oh, uh, well,
yeah,
that's not how I want to be.
yeah,
And so then I
yeah,
give my word to myself and to you, and I get diligent to say, this is actually how I prefer to behave in these kinds of situations. And if I wonder if anybody's following me or not, well, I need to be authentic and have integrity and be curious or be
yeah,
courageous. And if
yeah.
I'm those things, then I'm still a person worth following.
Yeah, and I want to come back to, I want to put a pin in what you just said, because
Mm.
what you just said was, you're going to live into that preferred promise, whether there's anybody back there or not. So,
Yeah.
so I want to put a pin in that.
Okay.
But I also maybe just want to piggyback a little bit. I think this is where we would offer our transformational equation to say,
Yes.
these encounters, as you defined an encounter earlier,
Hmm.
this encounter that shocks us or causes us to be stirred up or causes us to feel remorse or regret. And I love those as starting places. I mean, I think you and I say all the time that those encounters that shock us are immediate sirens and flashing red lights. Like, this is somewhere
Yeah.
that needs our attention. So I think we would offer this E plus R equals T if the encounter is
Mm.
the place that we feel some regret and remorse. I mean, I think everything you said was reflect on its meaning, reflect
Yes.
on what happened, reflect on what you felt, reflect on what you did.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
once you see those things, once I and you we see these things, now that the power in that is we get to decide how to go forward,
Yes, sir.
um, which is then preferred promise, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And we're glossing over some of the work to understand why we do those things, but I think what we want to
Yeah.
say is that we are not destined to repeat those things over and
Mm.
over and over. When we have one of these encounters, or you listener, when you have one of these
Mm.
encounters that shocks you or stirs you or causes regret and remorse, you are not destined to just do that over and over, right? There
Right.
is agency and power in these preferred promises that get us unstuck from some of those patterns.
Yeah. Right. We don't have to be the victim of our
Yeah,
circumstances. And
yeah.
yeah, uh, that's delightful what you just said. Love it.
Well, let me go back to the pin. Can I go back to the
Oh,
pin?
okay. Yep.
Because I think this is one of the defining factors or defining characteristics of a preferred promise. I maybe just want you to say, well, now it feels like I'm interviewing you. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, please.
You said, um, uh, paraphrasing, you said, even if nobody's back there, I'm gonna lead with authenticity, and I'm gonna live
Integrity
my
and
preferred.
courage. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think what's so striking in that, and what stirred in me when you said that, was you are taking responsibility to fulfill the promise that you made that you can control, because your actions are your preferred promise.
Yes, sir.
Your preferred promise isn't, I'm going to lead in those ways so that people will follow me, or
Right.
so that there's always people behind you.
Yeah.
And I think that feels so striking because you can
Mm.
actually have some agency over what you laid out.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it is what it is on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
purpose is to not is to not allow me to be stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yes, do I actually know if anybody's following me or not? Do I really know? Like, I
Right.
would know if they're like walking so close to me, they're pulling my shoes off because their feet are
Yeah.
stepping on me, but that's never the case. Uh, but the reality is like, this is how I want to behave as a leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, 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 it, it's, when I say it's on purpose for a purpose, I think that's twofold. Because I declare it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might say that's bull. Um, you don't lead with authenticity, integrity, and courage. You would never say that, but somebody might,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And but I can control them.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how I choose. This is how I prefer to behave.
Yeah.
And on my best days, I'm able to most of the time. And then there's
Yeah.
other times when, yeah, I don't live up to it, but this is the mess cleaning up piece. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it really is really valuable and it's vital for me
Yeah.
to be able to just live into those words there to a
Yeah.
degree. Like when I first wrote that, it was 100% aspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's good.
no, and but I need to,
Yeah.
and so I take intentional steps in that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you use the word aspirational. I mean, I mean, on some level, like I say what's so for me so much more now th than I ever
Hmm.
have, and it's still aspirational, right?
Sure.
In a sense that it's not yet automatic in me, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and I think what's true, when I say what's so, I mean to kind of go back to what you were saying about people following you or not
Hmm.
knowing who's following you. Um, I can name what's so. I can name what I want or what I need or what I desire. And people might respond in a million different ways.
Right.
Regardless of how they respond, I at the end of the day am able to say, did I say what's so?
Yeah.
And the measure of keeping that preferred promise for me and for the listener is, did I follow through with the things that I said I have agency to follow through on? Um, Regardless of how that's received. And now, obviously, in leadership, there's always things about saying, read the room, understand how people are received. Like we want to be clear on that.
Yeah.
This isn't like a, everybody else be damned sort of thing,
Of
uh,
course.
but we certainly do believe there's some agency that's solely ours in this preferred
Yeah.
promise.
Yep. It's really good.
Yeah, and we use specific language
Mm.
when we help people when we help people establish these, right?
Yeah.
We're helping them do this in a way, as you said, that's declarative, right?
Yes, sir.
What's the What the heck is the difference? But I have Michael
Well,
Scott running through my head
oh,
here
do
of
you?
like I didn't just say it, I declared it. Uh, I declare bankruptcy. Anyway.
Yes. I do declare.
Uh,
Here, I mean, here's the thing. Like I run into this with people a lot, and they'll say, I will lead with authenticity, integrity, and courage. Then my next question is when,
yeah. Yeah.
or when won't you?
Hmm.
Because they're like, quite honestly, like, um, if it's if the wind blows from the northwest, I might not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I will, I might, I hope to, like, actually no,
Yeah. Yeah.
declare it and
Yeah.
say, and I mean, we just have this deeply held conviction that we can behave our way into new ways of being and thinking,
Yeah.
quite honestly.
Yeah.
So, like, we declare it and say it with a strong language, so that it it has the capacity to dictate behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
How would you say that differently?
I don't know. I like what you just said about dictating behavior. I mean, that feels almost like a pause moment. That's a
Mm.
clip moment, Chris.
Hey,
Yeah, I mean, you call me all the time. I will sometimes still say I will or I'm going to, and I'm so
yeah,
appreciative that you say, "Oh, you are, you will," or
you will,
okay.
huh? When? Yeah,
Yeah. And I think what I appreciate about that is, especially as a nine Enneagram, I think people pleasers
yeah,
will hear this and say, there are so many opportunities to just say, this is too hard, or this is going to be disruptive. So I think
yeah,
I'll just wait until it's more conducive or easier
yeah.
or less disruptive. And the reality is that's just never going to come.
Right.
I think we just believe that practicing our way into doing things, um, it just has to include the times where it's challenging and it's difficult.
Yeah.
Even if we make a mess, even if we don't live up to the promise to its fullest, I think that the reality is, if we could live into transformation by doing the things that we want to do when it's easy, we would have already been doing them,
Mm. Yeah.
right? We would have
Yep.
already been transformed. We would have already experienced wholeness. I think the real fruit comes in those places when we need the declaration.
Yeah. Yep. May I ask a doozy?
Sure.
Here it comes.
Oh
Um,
boy.
when you think about um nine energy people pleaser,
Yeah.
um, what is the impact of you maybe living into your preferred promise or if the circumstances are just right, then you will. What's the impact of that on you and uh, the other party or parties that you're engaging with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the impact on me, like the obvious one is I'm just never going to do it. Right? I'm
Mhm.
never going to name what's so for me if I'm waiting for just the right situation because again, there's just rarely going to be just the right situation. Naming what like we as humans naming what we desire, what we want, what we need is hard. Like it is challenging.
So hard. Yeah.
So I think if I as a people pleaser am waiting for the time when it's not hard, I'm just never going to do it.
Yeah.
I think the impact on others is that they just would never get the real me, right? That they would never
Yep.
get an authentic view of who I am as a person. They would get the Kurt that's sort of reflecting
Mm,
their own needs right back at them, right?
right. Yeah.
Um, it-
Somehow
yeah,
we think that we're sparing them,
yeah,
right? And I would say false.
yeah, yeah,
That isn't the when I don't live into my preferred promise and I couch it in, well, I'm just trying to, maybe be a little softer today or
yeah,
not. I don't want to hurt them.
yeah,
No, I don't
yeah.
want to experience their emotional discomfort. And
Yes.
that's 100% me issue
Hmm. Hmm.
when I withhold and I
Yeah,
don't share what's actually stirring in me. I
yeah.
can I can I can engage in difficult conversations compassionately.
Hmm.
I don't have to run roughshod over you. I can. I'm good at it, and it's not how I want to behave, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but withholding or maybe the circumstances don't feel quite right today, so I'm
yeah,
not good. That just to me that's a cop out to me, and I
yep,
feel worse
yeah,
copping out than I
yeah,
do when I'm unaware
yeah.
or yeah,
Well, because we see it,
yeah,
right?
right,
Now we know we're doing it.
yeah,
Can I turn the tables a little bit?
mhm,
That's how a nine Enneagram people pleaser would experience this like I will or I'm going to.
yeah.
What's that like for an eight Enneagram who just experiences the world very differently? What are the things that might cause you to not live into it if you were to say I will or I'm going to? Like where do you get stuck in that?
In my healthiest state, when I'm my truest self, I think that I'm pretty good at taking the pressure off of the valve.
Mm,
I don't
yeah,
really want to inflict any pain. I don't want to make anybody angry.
yeah,
That I mean, there's true for me too. A little bit of this. Um, in health, I go to the resourceful, the good side of the two, and I'm helpful,
yeah,
right? But a lot of times, uh, uh, some of the things that are stirring or that I see when I experience injustice in the world and I
mm,
lead with authenticity, integrity, and courage, I'll say hard things.
yeah,
And then people can be knocked off kilter.
yeah,
And okay, now what? And in my best moments, I'm okay. I can say kindly, or I can be present in it and stay there. But if I will or I might, if the circumstances don't feel just quite right,
yeah,
um, that then I probably still do it, but it's not with care.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yep,
yeah,
yep, that makes sense. Well, we need to wrap up, Chris.
that sounds good.
What do you want to say if somebody's listening to this thinking, man, I like how this sounds. I would like
Yeah,
to break out of this pattern of these things that cause regret and remorse. How do they get a hold of us to see if maybe our way of working through these is a good fit for them?
I would invite them to log into the go to the interwebs and log on to www.brimstonecoachinggroup.com, and there you can schedule a free initial call And there's about 1,000 buttons on that page you can push, right?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And you can read a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
they're the the way we think, the way we work, is available there. And like we help individuals, teams, uh, corporations, groups of people, um, through workshops and a course around these two promises, and the middle one, the one that undoes the
Yeah.
protective promise, purposeful promise. Uh, yeah, those things are available, and it starts with a free initial call.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Chris. We believe that the work of doing things like establishing preferred promises is actually how the world changes. That this is actually the beginning of change in the places we live, work, and play.
Yes, sir.
So thanks for the time, Chris. It's
Thank you,
always a
Kurt.
pleasure.